Don't be a Silicon Valley neo-libertarian tech bro. Oh yeah, man, value trickles down, or yeah, we just gotta go crush it, or yeah, entrepreneurs, man, or we're out to change the world. Like, be out to change the world. Go do it. Make the world a better place. Value will move up. Get wealth because you're actually focused on trying to do good as opposed to just trying to get returns. Hi, Brant Cooper here. I'm fortunate I get to travel around the world speaking with startup founders, investors, ecosystem developers. I've learned a lot in my travels. I've got some stories, and I have some thinking that I love to share. Welcome to Brant's Rant. 10 years ago, I published a book called The Entrepreneur's Guide to Customer Development, co-authored with Patrick Blaskowitz. And it was the first book that talked about lean startup and product market fit, customer development, pirate metrics, and in some ways marked the beginning of this whole lean startup movement. Uh, and back in those days, we really thought the book was for, and really the movement was for tech startups. So sort of the Silicon Valley type of tech startup. I was in San Diego at the time, so I had moved down from the Bay Area in 2007. I was from down here, went to high school here, so I was moving home. But I had lived in the startup world up in the Bay Area, worked in Redwood City and Walnut Creek and other areas there, and lived through the dot-com boom and bust. Maybe sort of was part of the first gentrification in Oakland. Absolutely love Oakland, my favorite city in the world. Um, and the original startup experience was pretty powerful to me, uh, in a positive way, in the sense that I was not really a great employee when I was being managed by people, and so um, always was sort of tossed around like a hot potato in these jobs pre-startup. And when I joined my first startup, the environment there, sort of the chaoticness and the fact that you were in charge of your area, because that's sort of the nature of a startup is, you know, you have to drive impact for the business. It's not really about following some blueprint. You're supposed to be establishing this blueprint on how the business is going to operate, and then hopefully how you scale. So that first startup was Tumbleweed Software, then to become Tumbleweed Communications, and was led by CEO Jeff Smith, who's now founder CEO of Sonic Mule. Uh, and Jeff was a really good leader, and I think he probably still is. And one of the things that he said during one of the company meetings at one point sticks to me even to this day, and uh, and that was that that at Tumbleweed we were out to change the world. We were out to make the world a better place. And maybe today, you fast forward, wow, almost 13, 15, 13, 14 years, 20 years. Dang, I'm old. Somehow that ethos, so that we're going to change the world, is almost a cliche now, right? Oh, the startup tech entrepreneur, we're going to go and change the world. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg says that kind of crap all the time. And, to me, Mark comes across as being this addled teenager with like no moral compass, and who doesn't really know what he wants his company to be, other than he wants to pretend that he's a philanthropist with his billions of dollars, but he just seems completely clueless. Whereas Jeff Smith, to me, was he meant it, and he led that way, and so to me that was a really super positive experience. I started learning about the other side of Silicon Valley and the startup environment, though, at the same company at Tumbleweed. And that's when, preparing to go IPO, that the investment bankers come in there, and they sort of very condescendingly say things like, well, we just need you all to go and execute your job and we're going to, be successful and all of these type of things. And of course, you learn that those people who take the company public and are in the investment banking thing make way more money than any of the employees do inside of these companies that IPO, and yet they actually add very little value, and they're not trying to change the world to be better. It's just sort of the nature of the financial transactions that they get to make money on taking a company public, regardless of whether the company actually has a successful IPO or not. Um, and the dot-com boom was generally an example of venture capitalists in it to a certain degree, not all, but in the game to a certain degree as almost a Ponzi scheme, in the sense that their ambition is simply to flip the shares to the retail investors. And so it's grow at any cost, make the company sexy enough that then when you go public, there's a bunch of retail investors. That's you and me investing, but also even pensions and large funds of money that aren't necessarily savvy investors. And the venture capitalists are really just sort of trying to flip their shares, and they can walk away, with millions or billions of dollars without actually adding a whole heck of a lot of value to the company, and without from their DNA, from their instincts, trying to make the world a better place. And of course, it really bugs me when these people, the investors, go around and talk about how they're the job creators, which is even then stealing the thunder from the founders who were the job creators, not the investors. And I think that the investors sort of lose this picture that, um, you know, money flows like water to where the returns are. And so they, as individuals, are really not that important. And even as banking institutions, they're not that important. If they didn't exist, those pools of money would still flow towards where the returns are, because that's the natural phenomena, not the fact that they exist as middlemen creating jobs and in pursuit of this wealth that maybe does actually destroy the original ethos of founders. Like, maybe that's what Mark Zuckerberg really did want to do, though, even in his own words, his vision for Facebook was that it's going to be, a really cool directory for college students. So he didn't see where all this was going. But it's amusing to me now that you see some of even the most popular venture capitalists all over Twitter talking about how they're job creators and how they create this value in the world and how they know innovation better than other people do. And to me, it's all a bunch of bunk. They know how to make money. They know how to make money for themselves and their LPs. They know how to create wealth. And to me, that's a fundamental problem, because if you are purposely going out to create wealth, then you create wealth for a few. Whereas if your ethos is to go and create value for customers or value in the world, well, then you're actually creating wealth for a lot of people, and you're creating value, which could be one definition of a type of wealth. Then you're creating that for a lot of people. And if you could imagine a world where companies were committed and dedicated to creating wealth, that actually is what raises the standard of living around the world. And so, these venture capitalists are actually viewing the world as being, it's trickle down economics. And really, what most people get out of the trickle down are the dregs. There's hardly anything left. Um, there's a crazy movie out, called The Platform, where, and it completely represents this, where there's 100 and something layers in this prison, in this cell, and the very top floor is this feast is laid out to everybody who's at level one, and everybody gets to partake out of the food as it drops down to each level. So down when you get down to the 130th level or whatever, there's nothing left. and those people are dying of starvation, and just all sorts of craziness ensues. But that's trickle down. That's trickle down economics. And really, what we need is it's not even trickle up. It's push up, right? Is that you providing value on the very lowest layers of society? If you provide value and funds to the very lowest side, they actually put that money back into the economy, and that actually pushes value up. And guess what the top gets in that scenario? They get the wealth that they're after anyway. It just is they get a little bit less of it, but so they can't buy their 20th car. They should be satisfied with their 19th Lamborghini, for Christ's sake. That sort of mentality is just it's just a horrible lesson for young entrepreneurs and young startup people or people in startups. And I think that it's an ethos that trickles down, unfortunately. And uh, Professor Galloway and Kara Swisher out at NYU talk about sort of this horrible part of the tech gurus, and I won't get into that part of it now. I think it's I've been talking about the myth of the visionary, and it kind of plays into this whole uh, you know, cult of personality that we build around these technical people who become billionaires, and so we automatically sort of think of them as being, genius, uh, and it's just a lot of bunk. But even just looking at this, trickle down, and this, hey, we in tech know how to do things better than, non-tech, and Silicon Valley can't be regulated by government because government doesn't know what they're doing. And, I literally get these Silicon Valley tech bros that are like, yeah, but what about the DMV? As if that's some sort of argument to enforce antitrust or to regulate businesses. And it's just so vacuous. It drives me crazy. So don't be a Silicon Valley neo-libertarian tech bro. Oh yeah, man, value trickles down, or yeah, we just gotta go crush it, or yeah, entrepreneurs, man, or we're out to change the world. Like, be out to change the world. Go do it. Make the world a better place. Value will move up. Get wealth because you're actually focused on trying to do good as opposed to just trying to get returns. One of the number one reasons why startups fail is premature scaling. No startup entrepreneur ever prematurely scaled without investor money. It's literally the investors who are getting these entrepreneurs to scale before they're ready to scale, before having found product market fit. And the reason why they do that is because if they can create a sexy enough story that they can flip their shares to unaware investors, then that's what their ethos is. That's what they've made their wealth. And so really it's got to come out of the entrepreneurs returning to this belief that, listen, all of the successful entrepreneurs that I know, and those that are even in history, go read about Hewlett and Packard at the beginning of the company, or the beginning of IBM, or even Thomas Edison, or even Henry Ford, who was like a horrible anti-Semite. These people actually were trying to create value in the world, believe it or not. And the this idea that entrepreneurs are in business in order to create money as their primary goal is only said by non-entrepreneurs. They're said by academics. It's said by bankers. It's said by economists. It's said by politicians. But it's not said by true entrepreneurs. True entrepreneurs are people that want to make some sort of a change in the world and then relentlessly pursue that change. And the more successful they are at making that change in the world, they know that they're going to get some wealth out of it. And it's going to be wealth that is not just monetary wealth. It's going to be wealth that's going to be contentedness. It's going to be wealth that's in their soul, in their heart. And don't let investors actually change that part of you. That is what you're relentlessly pursuing. If you're relentlessly pursuing only wealth, then you're not really a business person, you're a speculator. Go make your money in Las Vegas. Don't be a Silicon Valley neo-libertarian tech bro. There's a role for government. There's a role for antitrust. Capitalism plays by rules. If you don't play by rules in capitalism, then you don't have a business environment, you have a black market. That is an unregulated capitalism. And we're going to get a bunch of, usury rates. You're not going to get, investments. You're going to have to pay bank loans. And if you don't pay them back, you're going to get your knees capped. Yeah, that's not the business environment that we want to create. That's not going to create value in the world. That's not going to raise the standard of living. And so we have to force an antitrust. We have to enforce the rules of capitalism. There are rules of capitalism. Go read yourself some Adam Smith. So the reason why I bring up the Entrepreneur's Guide to Customer Development, because I think that what interests me about, sort of where I was when I wrote that book, I was kind of pro Silicon Valley, and I still am. But one of the best things that has happened since that time is uh, is that these startup environment ecosystems are now in cities all over the world. And I'm happy to say I had a small part in creating that in San Diego. And I'm one of those guys that hates all of the Silicon nomenclature, Silicon Beach, which I'm happy Santa Monica can take that, and Silicon Slopes and Silicon this, Silicon Beach, Silicon, I don't know. There's all sorts of silicons, this and that, and I think it's silly. You don't want to be Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is what it is, and I think that there's an ugly side to that. I think there's a lot of positive, and there's an environment there, a there's an energy there that is not going to be replicated other places that's super positive, and there's a lot of people there that are out there to change the world in a good way, and they believe in it, and they're trying to do that. And I love that. And I really would never tell an entrepreneur not to go to Silicon Valley. I think that there's an experience there that is extraordinary, and it's still there. You can still find it. But there's also a lot of craziness, and that's the cost of living and real estate and all of that sort of thing. But there's also there's this neo-libertarian BS that is ugly, and it's vacuous, and there's a culture um, that rises out of there that is just not, they're not thinkers. It's like neo-libertarianism is like, nah, I don't really want to think about it too much. I'm just going to pretend I know what I'm talking about. And so it's like the capital of mansplaining, and there's a lot of misogyny there, and a lot of racism, I believe, and a lot of the issues in terms of funding women and people of color and minorities is systemic there. But there's a lot of people that are changing that there too, and so to me that's maybe where the change will come from. And so I'm not trying to paint just a negative side to it, but I do think that all of the other individual ecosystems that are growing up around the world, you need to put your stamp on it, and you need to figure out what do you want the culture to be in your startup area, and what do you want the ecosystem to be like. And it doesn't have to be just tech. It should be inclusive. It should be open up to all people of all persuasions. And I think I think, you know, we live in a super complex world, and a diversity of experiences and knowledge and backgrounds, and stories of origin, all of these things, that sort of diversity helps deal with complexity better. It creates this larger context that we all can learn from, and we can share this bigger view. Well, it just so happens that, skin color and gender and sexual orientation and some of these things actually are good proxies for diversity. So if you just surround yourself by people that look like yourselves, then you're not going to get all of those different flavors and that rich diversity that allows us to deal with complexity. So even if you're like whatever, even if you're in your ethos, you don't think it's right to look at those type of characteristics in order to um, to build out your company or your ecosystem. I think that you're anachronistic and you're missing the point if you reject diversity in terms of the way I just described it, the diversity of experiences and backgrounds and those type of things. And so if you buy into diversity at that level, then again, look for the proxies. Look at the ways that you can actually ease most, in the easiest way you can drive that type of diversity of experience. It's a proxy. But ultimately, I think that books like I Hope, Entrepreneur's Guide to Customer Development, Startup Blue Book is sort of what I call it now. Uh, can be a benefit to those ecosystems and to the entrepreneurs all over the world that are trying to start their business. And I'm not actually against, getting angel or venture capital investment, but I do think that you need to be the one that's just establishing the culture and establishing that, hey, we're learning before we're growing, we're learning before we're executing, that we need to find evidence of product market fit before we just simply try to maximize our growth. And ultimately, you have to find the investors that believe in that ethos. And if you do those type of things, if you embrace diversity, and if you embrace changing, trying to change the world, and establishing a culture that believes in that, and that value can be pushed up rather than this bullshit trickle down, well, then you're not a Silicon Valley tech bro. Congratulations. Hey, thanks for listening to Brant's Rant. If we're choosing capitalism here as a society, then let's make it work for a better world. If you'd like to join me as we redefine capitalism for the 21st century, go to beatcoop.co/D4A. Also, if you have a pressing issue that you're facing in your innovation group, your product group, your startup, and want to join me on video, see the link below. Subscribe, like, see you next time.